My name is Christina, 37-year-old. Today I'm sharing a testimony, a warning tale about how sometimes the people closest to us can hurt us the most. Not too long ago, I was living a sweet life, loving wife, doting mom. You know the drill. Enoch, my husband, was the kind of man who built and moved mountains for us. We were on top of the world, living in our own little empire of estates. Life was good for all of us. But as they say, sometimes life throws you curveballs. This was less of a curveball and more of a wrecking ball, though, because none of us were expecting this. When I was 30 and Enoch was 33, the big C word knocked on our door. Cancer. Leukemia, to be precise. It hit Enoch like a freight train, and our whole world shattered. The man who built mountains for us was now facing one he couldn't conquer. See, Enoch was a workaholic, always pushing himself to provide for his family. Although I told him to slow it down, he would never listen. It wasn't in his nature to be stagnant or still. He was always coming up with the next business venture or product to sell. "I've got to keep going, Christina," he'd say. You're just like that man from that musical, Hamilton." "Yes, him. Didn't he work himself to death or something?" I'd joke. "He got shot, babe." "Okay, but he was working non-stop, right? I don't want you to end up like that." "Don't worry, darling. Everything will work out for us." Yeah, that conversation isn't so funny looking back at it now. Little did we know that his relentless pursuit of greatness would weaken his defenses, leaving him vulnerable to something as sinister as leukemia. The news hit us like a ton of bricks, and we were left grappling with the harsh reality. Now, the average life expectancy after a leukemia diagnosis is a mere 5 years. Every tick of the clock felt like a countdown, urging us to cherish every precious moment we had left. Our daughters and I became experts in the art of making the most out of every laugh, every shared meal, every stolen moment of joy, all to shield Enoch from the stress that could further weaken him. We built so much love around him, determined to face this battle together. Despite the storm brewing within the family, we did our darndest to keep our spirits high. Enoch, bless his soul, became our guiding light. Even as he endured the harsh treatments, it was he, the one battling the illness, who could brighten our days. His laughter echoed through the house, a reminder that love and joy could thrive even in the darkest of times. Nights were our sanctuary. When the world outside our windows was silent, Enoch and I would crawl into bed, seeking solace in each other's company. We'd talk the night away, reminiscing about the old times, the moments that shaped us into the family we were. It was during these conversations that I learned the true strength of a loving partnership, and I will forever be grateful for those nights we'd share dreams, whisper hopes, and laugh about the quirks that made our love story uniquely ours. Enoch's resilience was a shining light, guiding us through this really dark period of our lives. As the years rolled on, Enoch's health didn't show any signs of improvement. The resilient man who had brought laughter into our lives now faced the brutal reality of a body that refused to heal. Yet, he was still clinging to that same happy-go-lucky spirit that had defined him all along. His smile, though strained, persisted like a flame in the wind. Inevitably, the time came when Enoch had to be in full-time intensive care. His laughter, once the song that filled our home, was replaced by the cold hum of medical equipment. Enoch lay on what seemed like his deathbed, a stark contrast to the man who'd once been the vibrant heart of our family. The atmosphere was heavy with the grim acknowledgement of the inevitable. His once lively eyes now held a deep sadness, a reflection of the pain that engulfed him. It was crushing to witness, and the laughter that used to echo through our home was now replaced by an eerie silence. Enoch, who had always been the one to offer comfort, found himself in need of all the help he could get. His voice, once a source of joy, had become a rare occurrence. In those precious moments when words escaped his lips, he spoke to me, sharing the sweetest sentiments in the middle of the suffering and the silence. He'd say, "Christina, you've been my strength, my reason to smile even in the darkest hours. Our love has been my anchor, the only reason I've managed to last several more years with you. And I'm grateful for every shared laugh and whispered dream. You and the girls are my greatest blessings. I love you with all my heart. I would bawl my eyes out every day. There is nothing that compares to the pain of knowing that you're losing someone right in front of you. I don't think I'll ever heal from this. Enoch, the man who had faced the world with unwavering strength, now faced his own mortality. Enoch died on a Sunday morning while the kids and I were attending Mass. He had lived to be 40 and had spent his 40th birthday tied up to machines and tubes, slowly losing his life. No way to celebrate a birthday. The man who had been our rock, our source of laughter and strength, was gone. I was left wondering, how would life go on without Enoch's laughter echoing through the halls of our home? I just couldn't fathom the idea of navigating this world without the love of my life by my side. I still can't. Patricia, Enoch's mother, arrived at the hospital to find her son dead. The sight was agonizing, a mother's worst nightmare realized. In the middle of this heart-wrenching scene, I reached out to comfort my grief-stricken mother-in-law. But what happened next shocked everyone in the room. Patricia violently pushed me out of the way. For a moment, I thought it was just grief consuming her. But then she said, "Get away from me. This is all your fault." What? My fault? I knew that this wasn't going anywhere good, so I said, "Girls, go outside for a moment." The girls hesitated, but sensing our need for privacy, left the room, leaving me alone to face the unexpected storm. "What's going on, Patricia? This is all your fault. Enoch worked himself into an early grave, always trying to provide for you and those greedy kids of yours. I've always hated you. You've taken the one thing that I loved in this life. I will never forgive you for this. I know that this is a lot. I'm sorry. Did one of your girls die today?" No. Then how could you possibly know what I'm going through? I think we all need to take a deep breath and just... No. I think that you need to leave. You and your vermin have no right being here. Get out, all of you. I'm not leaving. The girls and I aren't done saying our goodbyes. No, you have to go now. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. I didn't know why Patricia was attacking me like this. I know that grief makes people react in crazy ways, but I was never expecting anything like this. I felt kind of silly for telling the girls to go out. I'm pretty sure they heard everything. Patricia's yelling escalated, and I'm sure the whole hospital could hear her at that point. Concerned hospital attendants warned that if she didn't calm down, security would be called to escort her out. But Patricia, lost in her own anger, refused to listen to the warnings. Security guards arrived shortly after, firm and composed, attempting to guide Patricia out of the hospital. As she was being escorted out, she was yelling and screaming, cursing out all of us, including her own grandchildren, and humiliating us in front of everyone. After Patricia's dramatic exit from the hospital, I was left standing there completely dumbfounded. I was filled with confusion and sadness. How did a moment of grief and mourning turn into a raging blame game? It felt like a nightmare, and I couldn't wake up. Later in the day, I decided to approach Patricia at her home, hoping that with time, she would have calmed down and come to her senses. We needed to discuss the funeral arrangements, support each other through this tragedy, and try to make sense of the chaos that had ensued. So, getting through to her sooner rather than later was a good call. I got inside her home with my spare key because she wasn't answering the door, but I knew she was home because her car was in the driveway, and found her in the kitchen. "Patricia, can we talk? What the hell are you doing here? I don't want you in my home, you murderer." "Patricia, I'm hurting too. What is going on with you? Get out." "Not before we talk." "Talk? What's there to talk about? My son is dead because of you." I might have let this whole blame game slide at the hospital, but not any longer. It was getting out of control, and I couldn't understand why she was fixed on me as the cause of Enoch's death. "Patricia, please. I loved Enoch as much as you did. Blaming me won't bring him back. We need to support each other through this, not tear each other apart. I know you're hurting. Let me get you some tea. and we can start to talk about the funeral. I don't want you at the funeral. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My heart ached with grief for Enoch, and now I had to endure this crap from his own mother? Like going through all of this wasn't enough. Why do you keep saying that? What do you mean? I mean exactly that. You are not allowed to come to the funeral because you are the reason for his death. Now get the hell out of my house. After this big fight with Patricia, first at the hospital and now in her home, I felt like crap. Grief was already hitting hard, and now I had to deal with my mother-in-law accusing me of something I didn't do. I drove home in total silence, my mind all over the place. When I got back home, I put on a fake happy face for my daughters and said everything was cool. But inside, I was actually scared. I just didn't get why Patricia was treating me like garbage all of a sudden, and I had no clue what she'd pull next. The next morning, I woke up to a message in the family group chat. Patricia officially banned me from the funeral and said that the funeral would be happening on the weekend. This was on a Wednesday. I knew I had to sort this crap out with Patricia, but first, I had to meet with Enoch's lawyers to discuss the will. I wasn't even in the mood to go because going in that office would make everything seem so real, like he was truly gone. But I had to do what was right to protect me and my family. I had to step up. So I went to the lawyer's office and I was in for a total shock. You see, I figured that Enoch would divide things up evenly between his mother and me. But when I saw Enoch's will, big surprise, he left everything to me. Not only that, but he had left me this mansion he had been working on before he fell ill. He said that this mansion would be his greatest work, one where all of his grandchildren could roam around freely. I sat there staring at the papers, feeling grateful, but guilty. I asked the lawyer about what had happened because I thought that this would be the plan from the beginning. But the lawyer told me that Enoch had updated his will when he first got sick. I don't know what to say. All right, so after settling things at the lawyer's office, I decided to head over to Patricia's place once again to clear the air and to get to the bottom of why she was being so evil. I knocked on her door like 1,000,000 times, but she wasn't answering. Now, her car was parked right there, so I knew she was home, just like the last time. I was hesitant to walk in again, like last time, but I had been knocking for ages, and I started getting scared. Anxiety started creeping in. What if something happened to her? I mean, she was an old lady. What if she fell down or something? I used my spare key, opened the door, and called out for Patricia. No response. I went upstairs and looked around. Nada. Downstairs, I spotted a document on the coffee table. Enoch's name caught my eye, so I dove in. What I read ticked me off, big time. Patricia was scheming to snatch the mansion away from me. Seriously. The document was detailing some lawsuit where she wanted to sue me for ownership of the house, stating that I had no business owning the house and a bunch of other legal jargon I couldn't understand. I was beyond surprised. I snapped pictures of that snake of a document and stormed out, fuming. Got home, sat down, and called up the family lawyers to discuss what I had just seen. I asked if they knew anything about this at all. They were clueless, but one of them mentioned a past convo between Patricia and Enoch about the mansion. Apparently, according to him, Patricia begged Enoch to hand the house over, telling him he had enough houses as it is, but he shut her down. Back then, he chalked it up to just typical family banter, you know? But with this context, and after telling them how she forbade me from attending the funeral, it seemed like Patricia had some grand plan in the works. I thanked the lawyers and decided to confront Patricia. I called her since she clearly wasn't at her house. After 3 calls in a row, finally, she picked up. What do you want? I'm doing good, thanks for asking. You know, that's what normal people say when they pick up the phone. Stop bothering me. You want to send me to an early grave just like you did with my son. You're stressing me out. I have a funeral to plan, which you're not invited to. Need I remind you? So stop asking because I know you've come to bother me about that. Patricia, we need to talk about this lawsuit I found in your house. What's the deal? She played dumb at first, but I wasn't falling for it. Then, after some prying, She finally spilled it. She felt entitled to the mansion and thought it should have been hers from the get-go. She claimed Enoch promised it to her way back and that it was rightfully hers. I wasn't buying it. Enoch and I talked about the mansion, and he wanted it to be ours. That was always the plan, a family thing. So I called Patricia out on her lies and told her about what the lawyer said, and she started acting all flustered, silence on her end. And then Patricia tried to twist it, saying Enoch changed his mind, or maybe he didn't tell me everything. She was desperate. I shot back and told her that this wasn't going to fly, and that Enoch's wish was for us to have the mansion together. Patricia got defensive, accusing me of greed and emphasizing that I didn't deserve the house because I was the reason Enoch died. I hung up. There was no point arguing with someone who was not even in the same reality. And I realized the truth at that moment, the reason why she wanted to paint me out to be the bad guy. I called the lawyers again, gave them the rundown, and they said they'd look into it. They assured me that Enoch's will was solid, that Patricia didn't have a leg to stand on, and that any judge she tried to bring this case to would probably yell at her for wasting their time. Still, the whole thing left a nasty taste. Patricia was not the woman I thought she was. Now, with the funeral around the corner, I had to brace myself for whatever she'd pull next. The weekend rolled around, and it was time for Enoch's funeral. I sent the girls ahead with their aunt, telling them I'd join later. The plan, to catch Patricia off guard, make her think I wouldn't show. Just before the funeral kicked off and everyone was settled, I had arrived at the venue, perfectly timing everything, and walked in, throwing everyone, especially Patricia, for a loop. She made a big show of telling everyone I wasn't welcome, but here I was, defying her dramatic proclamation. Patricia was in the middle of her over-the-top eulogy, shedding what seemed like buckets of fake tears. My sweet baby boy, oh how I'm going to miss you. Everyone else might have been buying it, but I couldn't care less. I strolled up to the podium, wiped the mic from her hands, and began to speak. I began by sharing my love for Enoch and told the folks gathered there that there's no way I'd miss his funeral, even if it meant losing everything I've ever had. Tears were rolling down my cheeks, but I powered through it, recounting the precious moments I shared with my husband and sharing them with his loved ones. But as my speech neared the end, I decided it was time to address the elephant in the room. I looked straight at Patricia and laid it out. Patty, I know you've got your own version of reality, accusing me, blaming me for everything. At first I thought you were just going crazy from the amount of grief you had, but let's get one thing straight. Enoch loved me, and he wanted us to share everything, including this mansion that you're so obsessed with. His will says it all, and I've got the documents to prove it. Some folks looked shocked, others just uncomfortable. Patricia was fuming, but I didn't back down. I told everyone how Patricia tried to rewrite the story, turn me into the villain so that suing me for the house would make things easier for her. I mean, if she could blame me for Enoch's death, she could twist anything and everything she wanted in her favor. Maybe she thought I would give her the house to shut her up or out of shame or guilt, as she was trying to gaslight me. Whatever her reasons were, I wasn't having any of it. That's ridiculous. You think I would do all of this just for a house? After seeing your true colors? Yes, I do. I proceeded to share the document I had on the family group so that people in the pews could see that this was her plan all along. I revealed what the lawyer told me about Patricia being angry when Enoch wouldn't give her the mansion. People in the crowd began murmuring in disappointment, with some of Christina's siblings scolding her for what she was doing. This is when she started to crumble, making excuses and saying that she was just upset because she wanted at least something left behind for her in the will. So, that's all you were worried about? The stuff, not the fact that your own son died a terrible death? No, that's not it at all. Then why are you trying to pin the blame on me, huh? Why do you insist on suing me for the house? Because... Save it, Patty. Everyone can now see who you truly are. I'm just glad that Enoch isn't here to see it. It would completely crush him. I finished my speech, handed the mic back like the boss I am, and walked to where my daughters were sitting and hugged them. I could feel Patricia's angry glare burning holes in my back, but I didn't let it get to me. She looked more embarrassed than anything, and I was glad that she was feeling that way because how she treated me was awful. Enoch deserved better, and I was going to make sure his memory was respected no matter what Patricia threw my way. Naturally, after laying it all out for Patricia, the funeral proceeded with a thick layer of awkwardness and tension. The pastor took over, sharing some Bible verses and trying to bring back the somber mood. But after my little speech, it was clear things wouldn't be the same, and I got the people talking. After the burial and service, it was time to meet at Patricia's house so people could get some refreshments and continue to mourn. I was about to take my girls with me and go back to our home since we clearly weren't welcomed after that debacle, but something strange happened. I noticed a bunch of people coming up to me. They asked if we could continue the memorial at my home instead of Patricia's. Apparently, my words resonated with them, and some even shared stories about sour encounters with Patricia, saying her antics were shocking, but unfortunately not surprising. They apologized for Patricia's behavior, expressing their support for me and the kids. Patricia finally noticed people rallying to my side and got furious. She tried to redirect them to her house, but they weren't having it. My friends and family decided they'd rather be at my place. Patricia stormed off, feeling defeated and embarrassed, I'm sure. And honestly, I couldn't have cared less. This was about Enos and honoring his memory, not about Patricia's ego trip. At my house, we continued the memorial. People shared stories, laughed, and cried. It was a beautiful mess of emotions, but it felt right. Patricia's attempt to control the narrative had failed, and the truth was out there for everyone to see. I couldn't help but feel grateful for the support from those who believed me. Patricia's bitterness might have cast a dark shadow, but the love and memories we shared with Enoch came out strong in the end. And in a strange way, it felt like Enoch was with us, guiding us through the storm his mother had tried to create. As for Patricia, she's kind of unofficially shunned from the family. She's tried reaching out to some of the family members to get some sympathy, but all they've done is report it to me and leave her on red. So, that's my story, folks. Let me know what you think about it. Do you think I should reach out to her? Do you think that she deserves a second chance? Thanks for listening to my story, you all.